Hello and welcome back to Dwarf Fortress. Over the past couple months, I've played dozens of hours of this game, but have only 12 minutes of footage, 6 screenshots, and no notes to show for it, and that's even including a handful of minutes where I left OBS running by accident. The reason for this is that my free time has been consumed by a fortress that I never intended on turning into a YouTube video. I just wanted to have some fun playing Dwarf Fortress without a particular goal, challenge, or project in mind. Obviously, that got a little out of hand, given the fact that my secret fortress totally consumed all the enthusiasm for Dwarf Fortress that I was supposed to be using to produce videos. But now that 23 in-game years have passed me by, and my fortress teeters on the brink of FPS death, I feel like I can maybe have my cake and eat it too by taking you all on a tour of my mountain home palace finger, starting up on the surface. Though before we begin, I should give a quick warning that over the course of the tour, I will cover a couple things that the wiki considers massive spoilers, so you've officially been warned. If you were to approach my fortress the way a caravan, siege, or adventurer would, the first things you would encounter in my territory would be a massive wall blocking your way in, and a somewhat horrifying stockpile of bodies leading up to it. After constructing the wall, complete with an overhang to stop any would-be climbers, it seemed only natural to store my dead out on the perimeter of my land. After all, that's where all the future fighting was going to be done anyway, and every second spent not hauling corpses is a second well spent as far as I'm concerned. And the corpse stockpile even wound up acting as another layer of defense for the fortress when a visiting necromancer came to town and I used my military to scare him, creating a small but passionate zombie army in the process. If you were able to get through the wall, either by being let in through the front gate or the doors to the corner barracks, and you continued on in your quest to visit the fortress proper, the next obstacle you would encounter would be the original keep I built in the first few years of the fortress, with its high walls and cage-trapped entrances. Fortunately for you, getting this far sort of requires a degree of friendliness with the fortress, so the bridges to the keep are almost always lowered and ready to accept visitors. Once you've made your way through the trading area and down the ramp to the fortress, you'll find yourself at the top level of my mountain home, which is chaotic, a little too large, and contains a handful of doors and levers that a visitor should probably leave as they are. Especially this one, behind which the secret vampire Zasset Stricken Fountains has lived for the past decade. She may say she's never killed before, but I watched the blood drain out of one of my sleeping swordmasters with my own 2 eyes. Plus, I don't know who she thinks she's tricking, given all the years she survived without food and water. Other notable attractions you might like on the main floor include an adamantine stockpile with 250 plus adamantine wafers, a cemetery housing the spirits of nearly 100 former ghosts who terrorized the fortress at one point or another, a hospital that's killed more of my citizens through sheer neglect than any enemy army has been able to accomplish with weapons in hand, and obviously the busiest zones of the floor, the tavern and temple that have been at the center of every tantrum spiral the fortress has faced. Continuing down the stairs to the lower floors, you'll mostly find bedrooms, with the occasional guild hall, temple, or duke's residence thrown into the mix. It isn't until the final floor of the fortress that you can find another attraction of note. The king's platinum-plated residence, loaded up with gems, artifacts, statues, and way too much furniture to be practical. By the time the king arrived in my territory, my attention was pretty focused on some of the other projects I was working on, so I decided to build his residence, along with some of the extra guild halls and temples my dwarves had requested, at the crossroads of my mine, and told myself I would come back to finish it later. But obviously there is nothing more permanent than a temporary solution, so here I am wrapping up this fortress with the king's floor still unfinished. Beyond the bottom floor of the fortress proper, the path down winds through stifling stairways, narrow hallways, and carved out expanses, passing safely by the fortress's only farm, and through all the secret chaos hidden away in the caverns along the way. As a visitor, you may be unaware of what lurks beyond the walls, but I'm not, so this is the point in the tour where I have to introduce you to my favorite forgotten beast of all time, the native silver leech, Osman Mystery Mind. Osman arrived in my territory 13 years into the fortress's existence, which I only know because that is when its very impressive list of killed forgotten beasts begins in its military history. Don't focus too hard on Osman's named kills though, because I would argue that the 1,000 other kills it has racked up over the years may be even more impressive, or at the very least more devastating, given the fact that I've only ever seen roughly half a dozen cave dragons in all my years playing Dwarf Fortress, and Osman somehow personally killed 4 of them. Down below Osman's enclave, where the hallways begin to feel hot on your feet, you'll find yourself at the end of the path that began out on the edge of my territory in the corpse stockpile when you finally walk up to the edge of my adamantine mine. Across 15 layers of treasures, demons, and more gems than I knew what to do with, I slowly and methodically put my miners to work vacuuming up all the valuables. A job that I'm sure each and every one of them dreaded, given the near 100% fatality rate they had to deal with whenever they happened upon something unpleasant living in the walls. Over the course of a decade and a half, we pulled hundreds of thousands of dwarf bucks worth of godly treasures, diamonds, and adamantine out of the mine, and somehow managed to dig both deeply and greedily without fully breaching the underworld. After building an obsidian gate to reinforce the protection afforded to us by the single diagonal fortification that one of my unfortunate miners was tasked with carving, hell was both sealed off and completely visible to me, at least in this quadrant of the map, and so I was able to continue on safely mining adamantine for another couple layers before the FPS got too bad. The lag in the fortress only dipped into unplayable territory after my zombie army was created, so it would be pretty easy to type an exterminate command into dfhack and continue mining adamantine to my heart's content. But everything I did for the fortress, I did to make it a little more interesting, and killing the innocent zombies guarding my front gate would absolutely go against that goal. So instead, it's time to tally up how my fortress holds up in review and say goodbye. After taking into account the missed vampire opportunities, legendary forgotten beast escapades, opulence beyond my wildest dreams, and all the successful infrastructure projects, along with everything else, I'd have to give this fortress a perfect score of 4 dead cave dragons out of 6. Thanks for watching, an extra thank you to those of you who support me on Patreon, and I'll see you next time.